Hello everyone, welcome here at the book show. This is where we speak about the books I wrote, and I wrote many dozens. And I would say each and every one of those books have a lesson in it, or it's got some kind of a message which I want you to know about, or some lost history or whatever in the background. And it's amazing what came out in the research. The other day I did a video on Winston Churchill, which most people consider to be the man. And I think he's an idiot who got lucky. And in that video and in many, many books, I say why. And I'm not going to even speak about him now, call him a hard liar. But I want to speak about another myth. And that myth is Allied war dead in the Second World War. Now, let me say to you up front, I do not take any joy in anybody dying, especially not a man in uniform fighting for his country. I really don't take any joy in that. There is no joy to take. But there is this myth which, this daddy, Donald J. Trump, and these other Americans, and the Brits, don't throw them away. They really like to do things. They like to talk about French and France. And when they talk about France, it's always like, oh, white flags, oh. If you've heard those stories so many times, many of you would probably have said it so yourself. A French tank has what? 5 reverse gears and 1 forward gear or something like that. Oh yeah, what's standard issue for the French army? Oh, white flags. Do the French army actually use their rifles? No, but they are full of marks as they drop them down and raise their hands. It's one of those myths, which we just came out. It's total bullshit in history. But it was started by the Brits, like so many other things. Must I talk about the concentration camps again, the Boer ones, which most people don't even know about. So read my books and educate yourself. You will find out that the Brits are in no way innocent, and they're not innocent today either. And when you talk about war dead, of course, what things I'm going to say here is not meant to look down upon the men who died or got wounded or who suffered, mental issues. They called it a lack of moral fiber in those days. I think in the First War they were talking about, they had all different types of words, it escaped me now. In our time we were talking about bosses and things like that, and it's very real. There's only one unit in the South African Defence Force that never had any people with mental issues after the war, and that is Special Forces. We're very proud of that, and the reason for that is because they were so damn well chosen. And they will also tell you that if somebody had mental issues in the army or he had it afterwards, bombskok or whatever you want to call it, that was a word they used in the First World War, by the way. Then you had some problems before you actually arrived in the army, and you would never have made Special Forces selection if you had such issues. So that's why they don't suffer. But a lot of other people were just grabbed. They were national conscripts and they were just grabbed from school. Some were 17 years old. Last year you were at school, today you're firing a cannon in battle, or you're having close contact as an infantryman, or you're driving around with your, infantry fighting vehicles like the Rattle, on which we have 3 episodes coming out, if not out already. I don't know when you are looking here. But a lot of these people suffered from shell shock and things like that. That's the word, bombskok, First World War. And then, of course, came a post-traumatic stress disorder, which is more closer to our time, and it was thoroughly abused. I also have to say there were a lot of men who wanted an early pension, and of course they started playing stupid games, and they really, by doing that, in my opinion, they caused more harm to those who genuinely suffer than others. So anyway, it's all about flashbacks, things like that. So what I want to say to you is I do thoroughly understand, I do understand and sympathize with more dead, wounded, and those who is wounded in the mind. Because it really is a dreadful thing to take another person's life, yes, you get your psychopaths, you get your other people who like to actually kill, but they're in the minority. In fact, if you read some reports which came out, was classified secret for a long time, but I got hold of them, which were conducted after the Second World War on elite units in the US, the Rangers, as well as the paratrooper divisions. And they realized something like 80% of the men will not shoot to kill on the other side, even if being shot at. Now, it might be, of course, that they are so scared that they are just hiding behind a rock or whatever. But it was more than that. It was like they just didn't have that killer instinct in them. You're not born with that. If you are born with that, there's something wrong with you mentally, man. You get people like that and they are very good at war, but most people don't. So you have to train them. They have to overcome this. And I often use the example in our own unit where we would take a most beautiful Bader Meinhof woman, a picture of her now, not herself, she's very old now, but you know, and she was white, of course, and she was also quite pretty. She had a good body on her, nice smile, nice hair, everything on her was good. You would look at her twice if you're a man. Of course, if you're not a man, well, whatever. No such people in our unit. And so, to make a long story short, we put her up as a hostage taker. She would be standing there holding a Czech Scorpion submachine gun or an AK or whatever. She would be armed. So you would be immediately able to see that, okay, this is a hostage taker, you have to kill this person. And with hostage things, and you have to read codename Wrangler, Caribbean, which is the reason for this talk. Is codename Caribbean, but I will get to that. And also Rebecca 65. And yeah, there were so many of them, which we wrote about hostage situations where you rescue somebody on an aircraft. That would be Wrangler, or somebody on a train. That would be Rebecca 65, Caribbean. That would be maritime counterterrorism, which is the most difficult of all of it, in my opinion. And so we write about this, and I mentioned there that when you train, you have to kill this person, and when you go in, you have to kill him. There is no second chances there. There's no such thing as shooting his gun out of his hand, or trying to get him to surrender or whatever. He just can't, because he might be wearing explosives. He might be having a detonator with him to remotely explode explosives. Won't work, by the way, because it will be a total ECM type of radio waves going through to make sure that device of his doesn't work. That is standard. Go and read code name Angel. Yeah, it's in Codename Angel where we first reveal what can actually be done with such things. But it's for you to read and to enjoy the books. Because what I say here, the videos are really not complete, guys. Really, you're talking about books which are 400 pages on average. And of course, there's a lot of detail in those books which many people just don't know about. But anyway, so you would be trying to scramble signals and all sorts of things. But when you go in, normally you kill. There's no other way to do it. So we put this Bader Meinhof woman in, and we couldn't get the male operators to actually shoot at her. They just wouldn't. Until, you had a serious talk and you start kicking at them and telling them, look, she's going to kill you. You better wake up here. And then so you overcome that. And so we thought, okay, so will female operators, of which there are a great many, will they have any hesitation in shooting at this attractive woman? And the answer is no. No hesitation whatsoever. He's double tap her and carry on. And so we thought we would get clever and we get like a handsome guy there, not me, something like Brad Pitt. I always use the example, not that I think he's very handsome, but whatever. He's handsome for many people. And so we put him in and we thought, okay, what's going to happen now? So, well, the guys have shot him. No problem. The lads have shot him, and the females, yeah, they just shot him. No problem. They just killed him. So I realized also, in Africa it's a female, it's a lioness, female lion, which is actually the one who's doing most of the killing. Your problem is when a person on the other side is wearing your own uniform. That happened to me in the police. I've heard the story that when this Baron Strydom was Witwolf, he committed a whole bunch of murders there. It's the place called Strydom Plain in Pretoria. I wasn't there on the scene, but my unit, the flying squad, was there. And I'm speaking on a correction now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it's also described in some of my books. I believe it's Mean Streets 2, the second book of the Mean Streets series, The Mean Streets, which is about my time in the SA police between 1985 and 1991 when things were really bad. And I described the incident where he started shooting there at people, and there was one guy who actually caught one of the victims for him because he thought the Strydom fellow was a policeman. He was trying to arrest him or something, and then because Strydom was actually a policeman, but he did the honourable thing by resigning out of the police a couple of days before he committed the murders, which of course shows a little bit of integrity. But I wouldn't know why he did that. I still don't understand. He's still alive. If he wants to come and tell us on the other show, Legacy Conversations, then you're welcome. You're welcome to come and tell your story. He was later pardoned because it was a political act. There's no doubt about it. And he felt very strongly enough to do this, to become a radical. I don't know where he stands today, and frankly, I don't care either. But because he was wearing a South African police counterinsurgency camouflage jacket, not the full uniform, just a jacket, people did think he was a policeman, which of course he once was. So he would have had that demeanor of one. And so when they cornered him, according to what I've heard, they were about to shoot him dead because he couldn't defend himself. He was reloading his firearm. And they were about to just kill him. And they hesitated for that few seconds because of a uniform, and that's when he could surrender. That's a story which came to me. In court, it was different. In court, they said, no, he was arrested by some kind of a taxi driver or something. Guys, I don't know. But it would be a good example of what I'm talking about. So what I'm saying to you is, once again, all of this is, I don't look down on the dead. I don't disrespect their service, and I highly honor them for volunteering and going to war and to pay the highest price for whatever they believed in. Now, of course, that is the problem, is what you believe in, because mostly it's bullshit. And then after every war, of course, the victor will always write the history books, just like that. That is why this Winston Churchill said that history will be kind to me because I intend to write the history. Yeah, and he did. And since then, this myth about Winston Churchill actually just went on and on and on. But let us see, let's look at the real facts of life here. Let's look at the Allied war casualties in the Second World War. Because if you listen again, as I say, with Donald Trump and other people, you will know that the Allies, in the sense of the British Empire, that is England, as well as America, and of course quite a few other countries as well. They actually won the war, they won the World War II, which is bullshit. They didn't win it. They played a major part, yeah, but they didn't win it. Not at all. The Soviet Union won it. And we will look at it and we can prove a statement easily by just looking at the casualties. And so in Codename Caribbean, I started looking at the casualties. Now what I would do is I would make characters who's of course totally under my control, in the books anyway, in real life. Well, they're based upon real people, and of course some of them were under my command and some of them were not. Others were actually commanding me. And so we're also a combination of people. But when they start speaking in the books about history, and they start throwing facts at you, you better listen, because those things are well researched. It's not nonsense. It's not something which I, from sucked out of the air or whatever. No, not at all. No, those are, I'm proud that the books are historically 100% correct, even if the actual operations needed to be disguised for obvious reasons. But anyway, which came out in Code and Caribbean is because we got worried about maritime terrorism. And you have to read the book. It is fascinating because it will tell you the history of maritime terrorism. It will tell you that attack which took place in Mumbai, in India, where the terrorists were actually trained by Pakistani special forces, former special forces they say, but we don't really know how former they are. And they're very good. Don't make a mistake. Pakistani special forces are good. Based upon the SAS, really hard training, tough training, and an experience in their field, in their area, in their theatre. Highly respected. And so they were not supposed to actually attack a hotel like that. That came later. Their first idea was to attack a ship, like a passenger ship, and then take that over and probably sink it in the Suez or do something to Israel or whatever, something like that. And these passenger ships, of course, are extremely vulnerable. You will see these days they do actually almost like an airport where they scan your baggage and things, but there were a long time when they didn't really do that. And because it's a big ship, you could take quite a bit of clothing and bags and things with you, especially where your fat US people are going to the Caribbean on their big cruise. They take a lot of stuff with. Now, we look in that book, and this is just for background and for interest sake, is that the smallest amount of explosives known to have sunk a large ship actually happened in 2004 in the Philippines. And it was called Super Ferry 14. It's one word, Super Ferry 14. And that thing was 10,000 tons. So it's really not a small ship. It was quite a big ship. And she sailed from Manila, and she was fully loaded. And then an explosive device went off, which I later found out it was 8 pounds. What's 8 pounds? 3 kilograms? Yeah, 3.5 kilograms. It's really nothing. It's nothing. 8 pounds of explosives is nothing. If you think against a 10,000 ton ship, I mean, really. And yet it sunk. It sunk. And the reason why it sunk is bad seamanship in my eyes. Again, guys, I might be wrong. But a fire started, it wasn't controlled, and it got totally out of control, and then she sank in shallow waters. 116 people died, and that made it for the deadliest terror attack recently on the oceans. Of course, it's a matter of time before the Houthis sink a major vessel, perhaps a US warship in the Red Sea, even though they ran away from it as we speak here today, which is the 2nd of September 2025. They might be back, I don't know. No, the Israelis are trying their luck. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time before a ship like that is sunk, and then there will probably be more dead than 116. But as we stand now, that's how it is. So let's get to the Allied war casualties. I just mentioned this for interest's sake. There's lots of such things in the books. We all talk about 1940, the Blitzkrieg, where Rommel and Bates, he wasn't in command, he was a divisional commander at that stage, but did very well. Hard driving, just attacked all the time with the panzers. And you know the myth, you know the story, they overran France then surrendered, and Vichy France came into being, which was sort of independent, and then then the rest of France was actually occupied, and you know the story. And then in June of 1944, with D-Day, the Americans and the Canadians arrived, and they did the D-Day landings. And there was something like 38 or 48, I'm not too sure anymore, Americans and Canadians for every single Brit. Why? Because the Brits ran away from Dunkirk. They ran. They ran so quickly that it's just amazing. But before this, in 1939, actually, a British delegation went to Moscow. They were trying to get Moscow and the Soviet Union to align with them to take on Nazi Germany. And Stalin asked them, how many divisions can you field? And they said 1, perhaps 2, and perhaps 4 at about a year later. Okay. So how many divisions would Stalin face against Germany? Hmm. Let's see now. 174. Yeah, yeah. Britain is not an army nation. It was a maritime nation with a great navy. Nothing of that is left anymore. It's a joke. It's a total joke. The entire NATO is a joke. But you just need to read my books and you'll find out why. There is, of course, another myth, because I can't find any historical evidence of it, but again, I might be wrong, where Stalin apparently asked the Pope how many divisions he has. And then, of course, the answer came 0, and therefore he couldn't care less. Well, that's bullshit, because the Pope actually has the Antichrist, according to the Protestant Bible, the King James Version. Look at Oath of Evil and my other books, and you will understand why I'm saying these things, but for this argument, just accept my word. I actually have a lot of evil people there with them, and they also have a Jesuit order, the Society of Jesus, which is one of the greatest influence type of spy networks in the world. They are really behind every damn revolution, and they are behind every president. They are there. We know them. We see them. We see the universities, everything. But there is hope of evil. And also remember that I'm sure that this Antichrist is capable of getting the demons, the fallen angels of Satan, to work with him. And there are people who say that when they got chopped out of heaven, Lucifer, Satan, the dragon, and thrown onto earth, it's 1/3 of the angels. And there's people who say that these fallen angels number about 200 million. That's a bloody lot of evil spirits, don't you think? Don't you think? But anyway, so Stalin was wrong when he said that about the Pope, if he said it. But that shows you something, because in the 1940 campaign, after the, nothing happened for a while, and I think it was Chamberlain who said that Hitler missed the boss or something. I remember he said something like that, and Hitler was replying like, "Nah, I didn't miss the boss," because when the Blitzkrieg came. Now, anyway, the French army at that stage was shouldering 99% of the fighting. Yeah, 99%. Why? Because Brits could only, they had no divisions. They had, I think, 4 of them. They had almost nothing. Two army divisions in 1939 and another 3 planned in 1940. And then they would end up with 55 divisions. But in fact, that was their planning, and they ended up with about 25. Now, okay, you can say to me these were big divisions. And of course, you will come to me with the American term, the QME, that quality-wise, they're the best, they're better. No, bullshit, no, don't talk shit to me, it's not true. No. The Americans had to admit later after the war that, in fact, it was one-on-one. If the Americans would attack a German position, even with overwhelming air support and artillery support and armor support and whatever else support, if they attacked a German position on one, let's say 100,000 Germans, 100,000 Americans, every single time they would lose. Didn't have the quality. No. I spoke to a Vietnam vet, good guy, was in the 101 Airborne, 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. He lost an eye there, so he became quite acquainted with vet hospitals in the US. And he said to me one day, we were just speaking, he said, Chris, we were treated like shite. Our veterans from the Vietnam War, we were seen as punks, man. We were not the ones who were treated well there. The ones who were treated very well and sympathy-wise was the Second World War veterans. Why? Because they defeated Hitler, They were fighting fascism. Fascinating. Fascism. Do you even know what fascism is? You really need to read my books if you don't know what's fascism, because that is where corporate and state actually takes hands. Yeah, that's fascism. Want to have an example for it? Let me give you an example. Recently, in our lifetime, we had this dreadful disease, which wasn't dreadful, killed less than 1% of people. And then A lot of doctors wanted to speak out against it, like they would speak out against this thing called climate change, which is bullshit. But they never got the chance. They couldn't do it. They were just banned. I still can't even mention the name of that illness. And as the years went on, everything these people were saying about it turned out to be true. But now there are millions and millions. No, there are billions of people with things in their body which they don't know what it's going to do to them. Well, the medical evidence are now suggesting what it's going to do with them, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not the topic. The point I'm trying to make it is, according to most constitutions, you would have a right to say your opinion, to say, I don't want to be experimented on in a medical way. I don't want this, and these are my reasons. And the government can't stop you from doing that. And I'm speaking to you now as a former human rights attorney, right? But the companies like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all those shysters, all of it. What happened? No, we decided, no, fuck you, no. You're not going to do this. No. We have an agenda. And our agenda is the same as the government. What the hell happened to you liberals? You're supposed to be against everything which the government does. If a government says, hey, I think we need short hair, we look manly. You should have long hair. What's wrong with you? Burn the bra. What happened to you people? No, you became conservative. What a thought. I'm shocked myself now. Anyway, so this is where the companies then, the big corporates then can do the things which the state cannot do, which they did. There you find it, that's fascism. You think it has changed? No. What did the Bible say? Well, that is the New World Order. That is the system we're going to reintroduce. What did Pope Pius the 11th or 12th or whatever, the Nazi Pope, what did he say? What did he and his cardinals say? They said that the system which closely, mostly aligned with the Catholic system is fascism. Yeah, read Oath of Evil. Did the Bible not say that the first beast of the Bible, which is the Catholic system, did it not say it will have a dreadful wound, a little horn? Yes. Did he get it? Yes, 1798. Yeah. Pétlier, French general, atheist France at that stage, arrested him, broke his political power. And did the Bible not go on and say that this first beast, this Catholic system, which we identify as the Catholic system, that it will somehow regain its power? It will be not fatal. People will think it's a fatal wound, and it would lose all its political power, but not true. It will be resurrected by something or someone somewhere. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. 1929, woo, Mussolini. Yeah, he restored the papacy. And then what happened? Papacy became an independent state, like Washington, D.C. and City of London. Yeah, and then what happened? Well, whenever this Antichrist, this Pope, whenever he goes somewhere, he's treated like a head of state. Because he is. He's got his political power back. But he's treated more than a head of state. He's held in much higher regard. He's a voice of reason. He's a moral face of the world. Even though he's the Antichrist. How did that happen? Prophecies, man. Prophecies. It's playing out. He's seeing it. Very happy about it too. But read Oath of Evil. You will find the answers there in other books. This is not about that. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make to you here is that Stalin was wrong when he said that the Pope, the Antichrist, has no divisions or no evil. Totally wrong. I don't know if he said it at all. He might not have, but who knows. Let's get back to 1940. Only 10% of the Allied soldiers in Western Europe are actually from the Brits. And with the Brits, I mean the UK. I don't mean the Empire forces, because the Empire forces were actually fighting, and per capita they were losing more men than what the Brits ever lost in this war. I mean, if you think about the North African campaign, you will know that the South Africans and New Zealanders Australians and the brave Indians were doing a lot of fighting there, and a few Brits. If you look at Italy, same story. And then later, of course, the US arrived and learned quite a few lessons in life. Think of Catherine Pass, because they wouldn't listen. But anyway, they got there in the end. But in 1940, as I said to you, the French army was actually doing 99% of the fighting because the Brits were running away. They faced 150 divisions, and they themselves could only mobilize 90 divisions. Why? Why did France only mobilize 90 divisions? Why? Because France lost in the World War I, 20 years before. They lost 1.4 million men. And these men, of course, when being dead, could not go and find a wife and get married and have kids. So there was a population decline. And that is why they couldn't do it. But it was the French who were actually doing most of the fighting in World War I. Yeah, Daddy Trump, you people only arrived in 1917. The war was basically over, and you were such idiots, you were tricked into it by the Brits. That's why up to today there's even very few, if any, World War I statutes or remembrance days or anything like that in the US. Why? Because you people realized you've been tricked, man, you've been taken there. And this 1.4 million which they lost, France, in World War I, is double than what the Brits lost. Interesting. But I'm not even going to speak about this claim of the English that they were all alone in 1940, because you're just pissing and urinating on the graves of the colonial powers who stood by you. You know, you're just talking bloody nonsense. So let's look at actual figures, as far as we know, because you can never be 100% sure. But the figures I'm mentioning to you now is the ones which are generally accepted. So the United Kingdom has suffered 326,000 dead soldiers in World War II. This is not civilians, this is not people who died of bombing raids, which were really not that bad. And by the way, this mark on my arm is varnish, it's not blood or something. I was varnishing the doors. We have work to do here at the guest house. I'm not, this book show is actually not very important to me, just making the videos on request. So anyway, because they had 326,000 dead, they came in, if you look at the number of casualties, and this is gruesome, like from 1 to 20, in the most being at number 1, the top spot, then it goes down. They come in at what? Number 5. No. Number 7? No. Britain, 11th place. 11th place. Yeah, you're in at 11th place. I wonder where's France. We'll have to look at this. Okay, so who's number 1? Who lost the most casualties in World War II? Well, let's look at it. The Soviet Union, of course, was fighting against Nazi Germany at a scale which we cannot imagine. And I was explaining to you as follows. I have uncles who fought in the British Army, or the South African Army anyway, but on a British command in the Second World War. Actually, uncles of my father, but I can call them uncles as well. And one of them was actually at a place called Tobruk. And at Tobruk, he won the military cross by escaping with his men after the surrender, about which I can say a lot as well. And then, of course, came El Alamein. And at El Alamein, Montgomery got famous. And I really admire Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery. I think he's one of the greatest soldiers who ever lived. And unlike people like Eisenhower, he actually saw combat. Eisenhower in his life never saw combat. Ever. Never. But he was good. We take nothing away from General Eisenhower. So A lot of main 998 field guns were firing. We were the initial barrage onto the Germans. 998. There are pictures and there are films taken at that time where you can see that front is just lighting up as they are shooting. And it was tremendous. It was tremendous. They were just shooting. But 5 years later, no, not 5 years, 3 years later at the Battle of Berlin, the Soviet army was there. And now we're taking Berlin. Yeah. Who's that fellow, that senator there of North Carolina? What's he? Lindsay something? What do we call him? Miss Lindsay or what? Crime? Other day he was saying that the American army actually took Berlin. Idiot. Listen to me, I'll speak slowly so you understand. You never took Berlin. No, your forces were halted. The Soviet Union took Berlin. Okay? Please wake up, study some history before you open your mouth. You didn't take Tokyo either. No, you didn't. Perhaps you took Paris. Did you? Go and read history books, mate. Wake up, you're an idiot. So anyway, they were there. They got the Soviet Union is now at Berlin. This is the end of the war. Took massive casualties. Raped about 1 million German women, they say. They deny that, by the way. But they were shooting, not 998 cannon. 55,000. 55,000 cannons and rocket launchers and heavy mortars were shooting. And they would shoot from the left to the right and right to the left, because if they fired at one go, they would burst their eardrums. Can you see the difference now in fighting? And that is why the Soviet Union, according to themselves, lost 13.6 million soldiers. 13,600,000. And some people say it's a lot more than that. Some say that more than 1 million of them were actually executed for cowardness or not wanting to fight or anything like that. So it's probably around the 14, 15 million mark. Some talk about 20 million. Now I'm talking about soldiers. I'm not talking about civilians, because that would be many millions more. But only soldiers fighting men and women, because they had their women fighting. Some of their fighter pilots were famous to this very day. Their snipers were famous to this very day. Yeah, so then came Germany. They lost 3.250 million men. 3,250,000. Now, should you read the code name Alphabet 32, which is about the Mokapa anti-tank missile and how it's used in combat, that is the most advanced anti-tank missile in the world. Yes, go and read it, you'll learn something. But there, I also looked at Allied war crimes, because these people, these Second World War fellows, they'll never commit war crimes all the way. No, man, they defeated fascism, don't you know? Yeah. Interesting, they raped something like 13,000 French women. Those women were French, the French were actually on your side, so you raped your own. That's the American army for you. Yeah, don't read those books. I've got the statistics. I have yet to meet an American soldier or a UK one who can keep his little prick in his pants. No, they have to go and rape. Yeah, they have to go and buy sex from a prostitute and then murder her and throw her into a water tank, things like that. Fascinating. But anyway, we're not as great as you think we are, because in war, dreadful things will happen. Sadly so. There will always be somebody who would do something which should not be happening. Not to say everyone is like that, but a lot of war crimes did take place on the Allied side. And one of the major ones which happened is once the Germans started surrendering, in the beginning of the war, or when the Americans, everybody got involved, And they started surrendering. They would be taken out of England, out of Europe. They would come to places like South Africa, a lot of Italians. Some of them stayed behind. And a lot of them ended up in the US, a lot of them ended up in Canada, places like that. Some of them stayed behind. And there they were treated fairly well, no doubt about it. But after the war, after the surrender, these Germans were now surrendering. They're now prisoners of war. Eisenhower and the High Command of the UK, Montgomery and those people, to their lasting shame, actually realized they don't have food to feed these millions of surrendering Germans. Yeah, they didn't have food. Why do I mention this? Because most of you listening here would have served somewhere, which meant that you probably were trained in the Geneva Convention, as well as the Hague Convention, so you would know you're supposed to treat a prisoner of war with human dignity, and you're also supposed to feed him. And the standard would be, he would be eating what you are eating. That's the standard. That's the law. That is the rules of war. Right? And now it came out you couldn't because you say you don't have enough food because you didn't plan for this. And of course you bump 7 sorts of shit out of the countries around you. So they don't have food either. There's really famine going on around you. It's a mess. It is dreadful. It is total war. So apparently, and you can read about it in Alphabet 32 or listen to the video where I speak about it quite a bit. Also in the book I wrote, Voices, War Crimes USA. You will find it there. You'll find out that they overcome this by simply saying these people, these surrendering Germans in uniform, they are not actually prisoners of war. Well, they sure as hell look like prisoners of war. I mean, they are put their arms down, they're wearing uniform, they've surrendered. But no, they're not. And what we're going to do is we'll call them something else. And then the Hague Conventions are not applicable. And then the Red Cross cannot go and visit them. They say about 900,000 of them died of hunger in those open-air concentration camps created after the war. So you can add that to this figure as well. Did the Brits follow suit? Yes, of course. Little lackeys of the US, of course they did. Little chihuahuas, they did exactly the same. Exactly the same. It is a shameful event in your military history. And yet most of you listening to me now will look at me and say, that's not true. That's not true. Well, wait, it's true. Read the books. It's true. Okay, so we had the Soviet Union right on the top. Then we came Germany. Then came Japan, 1.5 million losses. Then came China. Ooh, did you know China was involved in the Second World War? Huh? Did you know that? From about 1957. Huh? Did you know that? Did you know that most of the Japanese army were actually fighting in China and not so much on the islands and wherever else the Americans were arriving? Huh? You know that? You know that the Australians? It's so funny. They sent one of their divisions, crack division, guerrilla division, came from North Africa, went to Singapore and were immediately surrendered 3 days after arriving. And then came the death marches, and then came the River Kwai and all those things, which by the way I will visit in the next month to make a video there for the other show for Legacy Conversations about River Kwai, the bridge over the River Kwai. Yeah, these men were just surrendered and then, of course, beastly treated by the Japanese. And even that is strange, because during the Russian-Japanese War, I think of 1905, which Russia actually lost, the Japanese became known as the people who treated their prisoners of war with exemplary fashion, fantastically well. But in one generation, they changed. Why? They became fascist. Yes, they became fascist. They became a military fascist regime. And therefore, they started treating these people, well, you surrendered, you're not a man, you have no honor, you're like an animal, we're going to work you to death or we're going to kill you. And we're going to do it. And they did. And they did. Don't forget it. Don't forget these war crimes. So what's even worse is that I found out that the Australians, after the Americans would now storm an island, they would take this island and move further. The Australians would come in to try and, pacify it further, and if there's any remaining Japanese to get hold of them. They lost hundreds of men doing that. And my question to you is, Australians, you are brave fighting men. You're one of the best fighting forces there is. Is that the best you could have been used? Huh? A second line, secondary type of troops suffering casualties for what? For what? It's amazing how you can have any status or any respect for your generals of World War II, the ones involved in this incident I'm talking about now. I don't know. I don't know. Your prime ministers, how can you respect those people? They made you a second line monkey face type of idiots. That's what they did. Why were you not storming the beaches with the Marines? You're capable of doing that. Is that where your war crimes come from your special forces units in Afghanistan? Where your one prime minister had to stand there with a bowed head and say to the Afghan people, I'm sorry, my people fucked up. Yeah, they committed war crimes there. And then he came out, why? Why did you commit those war crimes? Because your special forces are good. Why did you do it? Oh, we felt inferior to the Americans and the Brits. Mate, perhaps you people should stop bowing down to a royal family in the UK. Perhaps you should become Australians first. Perhaps you should stand on your own bloody feet. Huh? Perhaps you should stop this nonsense of trying to get the US to protect you, because the US won't. They lost every single war. They run away for home. And they're the second beast of the Bible. You want to stand with them against a place like China? Okay, do it. Do it. I'll be laughing at you when the time comes. So anyway, so Japan lost 1.5 million. China lost 1.3 million. Then, by the way, for those of you who don't know history, it was the Soviet Union, 3 months after the end of the war in Europe, who actually invaded China, Manchuria, and they overran the Japs in a blitzkrieg, which is the greatest and the biggest blitzkrieg ever in the history of mankind. They called it Easter Wind or something like that. And they took an area twice the size of Western Europe, and they did it in something like a month. And that is why Japan surrendered, not because of atomic bombs. Just saying, because it seems, Daddy Trump, you people don't know history. Really, you don't. You're embarrassment. Okay, after China came Poland. Poland lost 850,000 men. Romania, 520,000. Austria, 380,000. France, 340,000. 340,000. But they only fought up to 1940. Yeah. Listen, you British assholes. When you were running to Dunkirk, and you were running so fast you left your weapons behind. Oh, shame. You were supposed to go back. Do you know that? There was an agreement. With France that you will go back and you'll fight. Did you go back? No. When did you go back? 1944. Then there were 38 or 48 Canadians and Americans for every one of you. Huh? Yeah. That's one of the major reasons why France actually came to an agreement with Hitler. You get that? Because you betrayed them. That's why you're walking around now saying, oh, the white flags. No, idiot. You're the one who betrayed them. You caused this. And then, of course, came Mers al-Kabir, which I speak about in other episodes. Yeah. So France lost 340,000 men. Okay, that includes, I suppose, Charles de Gaulle's people. You lost how many Brits? 326,000, sir. Yes. That is in all theaters, right? That's in against Japan. that would be against the Europeans, that would be North Africa, everywhere. So you idiots actually lost, what do I hear? You lost 14,000 men less than France, who effectively fought for only what, less than a year. You fought for 6 years. Am I wrong to say to you, you were actually hiding behind other people, like you do today as well? You know, that thing of, let's go, I'm right behind you. Now we'll take on Russia, but America must go first. A pathetic little British army, let me tell you something about it. I like saying this to you, it's the 4th video I'm saying it to you. You have more horses than you have tanks. Do you know how many tanks you have operational? 40. 40! That's not even a battalion, idiot. Royal Navy. Tell me, do you have more admirals than fighting ships? Yes. Aye. Yes. You've got nothing. Nothing. A few years ago, one of your submarines actually surfaced there close to Gibraltar. And they hit a merchant ship because, well, incompetent, what else? And with that, 1/3 of your naval submarine force was gone. You have aircraft carriers without aircraft, mate. You have aircraft carriers without escort vessels. And then they flood every now and then. Then you have a Royal Air Force. Such wonderful people. Yeah, you got them. And then you implemented what? What do I hear? Affirmative action. Yes. Hey, you don't want the white man. He must not fly. Hey, no. Hey, we need somebody else to fly. Hey, and now we don't have pilots. Yeah, now you don't have pilots, idiot. Yeah, no, you don't. You don't have aircraft. No. You know, as a South African and as an Afrikaner, I thoroughly enjoy your misfortune. Really, I do. And whatever problems you have in the UK, I thoroughly enjoy. But as a Christian man, as a Seventh-day Adventist, I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for what your politician has done to you. I remember the British Tommy, the average British soldier, as a fantastically nice guy. And I remember you people able to mix with everybody, and you were so good at it. You were so good at it. And your special forces, even though I rate them low today, one stage you led the world. Yeah, your engineers, everything, you led the world. You spread the word of God through your empire. You did so much good. Yeah, and then what happened? I can tell you, but it is enough of evil. So anyway, Brits, no, you didn't fight. No, not really. No. If even France have more losses than you, don't come to me and say you were victims. No. If even France, who is not fighting all the time, has more dead than you, then really, guys, you're not bringing your part, were you? You were not shouldering the burden, were you? No, you were not. Okay, so after that came Italy, 350,000. Of course, now there's a nation would like to surrender easily. And then Yugoslavia, would you believe, also 300,000. The US numbers are seen as about 416,800 dead. Now let me give you another shocking fact. The amount of people you murdered with your carpet bombing, which had very little effect, by the way, and was vastly inaccurate. Your strategic bombing campaign. You killed more civilians, war crimes, in other words, civilians, with your strategic air campaign, that is USA and Britain, both of you combined. You've killed more German civilians and French. Don't forget, you bombed the hell out of France as well. And our French, let's not forget about it. You've killed more civilians than that you lost soldiers in the Second World War. You were not fighting. Yes, you were there. Yes, you contributed. Yes, we're grateful to you. But don't come with bullshit to me, with a myth about the greatness of your generation of the Second World War. No. Individually, yes, perhaps. Some, yes, definitely. Politically, you were nothing. Nothing. The ones who were doing the fighting were the Soviet Union and China. And I say this to you as a man who fought communism all my life until they didn't exist anymore. And that is my story. And that's what you will find in my books about the lack of British casualties in World War II. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you're not too shocked. God bless until we meet again.